Hey, Bambos.
Hey, Andy.
How was it without me?
Oh, fuck you, man. like, not without you. So for those of you who don't know, Andy was sick for the last few days.
Yep, sure was.
He had like a flu and fever, like high fever, actually.
High fever. I went to go get my COVID test.
And, we both, actually the three of us, including Rani, we did isolation just in case we were infected.
Yeah.
And
I was negative, thank God.
Yeah. But it really gave perspective, at least for me.
I don't know. The two of you and me, we all went through it very differently.
I know. You were like, I don't care. I'm going to die.
Like, I die. It's fine. What are you guys making a big issue about here? Life is that, like I tell you all the time, live every day like it's your last. And when you're there, you're like, oh, wow, that was a great gig.
So
right?
He was in bed, guys.
I was. I was making grunting noises for 2 days straight. I was like, and I didn't even realize Ronnie was hearing me, but she just didn't react at all.
Anyway, today's show, we're going to talk about escaping an abusive relationship.
Yeah, and we're going to do that with Julia Thompson.
Who's in the UK, right?
She's in the UK right now.
And Andy, we're going to do this where?
On A Wonderful
Chaos. So jokes aside, though, I really spent Saturday. I couldn't work. I was really feeling into there was a deep sadness and a pain. Because in order to feel how much I love you, I had to also allow the pain of and actually coming to grips with, okay, if he would die, then he dies.
Yeah.
So I know we made jokes in the beginning, but Saturday was really like if I had COVID and I was in isolation, then I realized, oh wow, like if I want to call a friend and just have some support, I couldn't even do that. So that was a little bit of a curse with COVID, but also a blessing, because in a way I had to find my way through it.
And he couldn't call me.
Well, I did call you, but you were moaning like an old woman. I wasn't going to call you to support me.
Exactly, that's what my point was. Can you call me to support me?
Because you're dying?
Because you're dying right now. Yeah.
I really don't like the light on our faces today.
Really?
It looks like we're
overexposed. Yeah, we're very overexposed. Do you want to push some lights away? Yeah, that looks like my forehead. I think we need to I need to dry up some forehead here. Oh, isn't that funny? It's got a green. Doesn't help any.
Okay. So
Julia Thompson. Julia, I've had contact with Julia, and we met through Case. Case always had fun and unique friends. Julia was dating a man who was very into the non-dual space. And he was soft, gentle, beautiful man. Ram was his name. Yeah. And we met. I remember the first time I met him. It was one of the funniest conversations, because I've often found when you meet other people that are very spiritual in their journeys, they'll often try to sense how far are you connected to whatever they associate with spirituality in their heads. So we were sitting in this spa in a place that burned down.
In California.
I have to remember the name of it. Beautiful place. Harbin Hot Springs. One of the most magical places that I've ever been in my life, and unfortunately it's gone. And he asked me in this hot spring, I can remember it like it was yesterday, Andy, he says, are you enlightened? And I looked at him and smiled and said, as far as you know.
Wait for it.
It was one of these. And I didn't know what was coming out of my mouth, but I had the funniest laugh. It was just, I always think enlightenment is whatever the three people who've come together and agreed on whatever enlightenment is, So if I was probably enlightened to several groups and totally unenlightened to several other groups, depending on what definition they made. But Julia and us, we had contact through the years. Julia, it was very funny because I hadn't had contact directly with Julia for a long time, but she was posting some things that triggered me because it was things that kind of showed she wasn't in a very good situation and not in a very good relationship. And she had issues. And I was like, wow, because the Ram, right, that I knew was such a soft, loving person. But I started making false assumption that the issue she was having was with this guy. So I'm thinking, wow, I'm really fascinated. How could that be? Like my brain didn't process it. So you know how the brain works. It makes a story, and the story, even if it's not real, you're like, God, there must be something. And then it was only about maybe 3 weeks ago we spoke. And I said, hey, listen, I got to understand what's really happened here. And she says, no, Andy, I ended that relationship, got into another one, and there were issues that arose. And that was what I was posting. And I just thought it was really wonderful how the mind just writes it, fills in the gaps it doesn't have. And we clear that up very quickly. And but she shared with me the struggles that she'd gone through. And as I talk about it, I could get really emotional because in a way, I felt into the journey that she'd been through in that time that I didn't see her. And it didn't feel comfortable to ask her to come on the show because it was so raw. When it's that raw for me, I don't want to ask somebody else to be with me in that because I don't even know if I want to be in it. And then I asked, God, I could cry talking about it. So because it's a weird thing when you ask, you really ask from this vulnerable place, like, do you want to share this time together on that topic? And it was almost like without even having a second thought, she said, yeah. She said, yeah, because I'm not the only one going through these things. And it has nothing to do with the man. It has to do with each of our journeys and our inability to deal with very strong personality types and how we sometimes aren't capable of being the person we want to be in those situations. And we all know that experience.
Yeah.
And so when she said that to me, I thought, wow, I really wanted to have her on the show. And she said, yeah, let's just do it. So that's how we got here.
She's got balls.
Yeah. Yeah, because I don't know if I'd want to talk about this on the air. You know, in her case, it isn't even all that. It's not like it's really easy to talk about subjects when they're like 5 years gone because you can like, hey, let me like, I'm so distant, I can act, but to be sort of still somewhat in it in yourself and be present is really a gift.
Yeah, I should mention it was just.
Yeah, more recently.
Yeah,
yes.
like in November last year.
Yeah. So that's really a gift that she gives us. Yeah. And important for us was to also qualify that it really is about her experience and there's no idea. And that's why she was comfortable. She's no vilifying anyone here. It's how do you make peace in yourself? Yeah. That's really the story. Yeah.
Like behind the scenes, before we even talked to Julia behind the scenes, we were even talking like, how do we navigate this?
Yeah.
And with a lot of love.
Yeah. And I always want us to be, because we are also irreverent. So I also don't like to I don't like to like tiptoe. So if I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable, but I don't want to pretend like life isn't full of so much joy that we shouldn't be enjoying even the wild, uncomfortable shit. So we'll see how it works. That's it.
Let's see how it works. And with no further ado.
Hey.
Hello. Oh my goodness, what a beautiful introduction. I feel so connected to you now. Yeah, and to Bamble, both of you. I feel like, that was just perfect way to open up the space because it's a very vulnerable time. It's a time of I also on Saturday, this is the first time I've been sick for I can't remember how long, and I've spent 2 days in bed with the same thing, just being completely and that's the way it is for me. It's been like this. That's the gift that I got from this actual relating, was that it really shook me up I needed to be shaken out of my complacency.
And when you say sick, did you associate with coming on this show and having a lead up, or was it?
Not at all, not at all. No,
Oh.
it just so happened that I had a friend come and visit me last week, and I ended up with a massive cold.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, but anyway, yeah. What would you like? Where would you
Well,
like?
I'd like to start with sort of a little bit of context. Like, I know you as a soft, sweet, like almost like this little rose that if you pluck it too hard, it's going to lose a bud, you know?
Right. Yeah, that was pretty much where I was on my spiritual path, you know. That's where I last saw you.
And when I saw you there and you were together with this beautiful Ram and you were basically back in the 60s wearing the kind of the clothes of the day, you
We
know.
were hippies, yeah.
Totally. And Harbin Hot Springs, the most hippie place you could be. And now I left you there, and now I meet you, and there's this gap of you go from this man who's sort of almost as soft and gentle and loving, as spiritual as one could find, and you move from that and you move into kind of what I gather is the exact opposite. And I want to know from like what you took in your journey, how does it move? Like, what goes on inside of you to say, I'm in this relationship and now I move on to that? Like, how did that happen?
How it happens is, wow, yeah. This is it's a development of capacity within yourself. It's actually a heart development, and it's not something, if you're really living it, if you're really living life, you don't, you know, it's like you're not going to hide away from things that are moving. So I've always moved. I've always had a lot of mobility in my life in terms of my awareness. And it's just the one thing that I've absolutely loved developing. And
What was that? What was, because I'm talking now specifically to the feminine energy and the masculine energy, more
the
specific.
feminine energy for me was that basically I was unwittingly in myself. I hadn't grown this masculine part within myself, so I was still enabling boys basically in my life, and that was the reflection I was getting. And
slow that down a second.
Yeah.
Like, I would love you. That sounded like you said something that a whole show could be spoken around. So you were just speak through what you just said.
Yeah. I hadn't, as part of my own growth, I just hadn't realised, and that was the soft, gooey part of me as a deep feminine that you got there, because there's no doubt about that, about my energy, that I'm a very deep feminine woman. The thing was that I hadn't learned how to balance my energies, and there's a very specific way of taking care of yourself, of taking care of guarding your own innocence as a woman, and just taking care of that so that you can be authentic with other people. So that was an area that I was just learning about, and my voice is going all shaky. I love it. Yeah, so I got into this relationship. It was dynamite. This guy was just absolutely, he was beautiful. And I had developed a way more presence and power in my life at the point when I met him. I was in a really, really good place. And I really felt in myself, you know, in a position of deep presence and quietness. So I was magnetic. And this guy was just absolutely, he's just a beautiful man. He's very alpha.
And was he alpha when you met him, or did he progressively become more of that? Was it something that progressed in the relationship?
He progressively became more, because there was more room, there was more space. I was giving more space for him to come out, basically. And, you know, we had conversations where it was just clear that and he'd said to me, you know, that he'd never felt able to actually show his full masculine to me. And it was pretty amazing in the beginning. But quietly, gradually things started slipping in, red flags where I should have spoken up. And I just believed, I really just believed in the power of my own silent presence. And while there's truth in that, it's not enough when you're with somebody who has experienced such a level of violence, you know, whether it be outer violence or whether it be, you know, things like addiction, you know, all of that stuff was playing out. And I'd not really been around that. I hadn't been around, you know, addiction and you know, just really intense stuff happening for him. So I was just as inept in my ability to be with him as he was in his spasmic movement to sort of like be opened up by the space that I was offering.
I'm curious. It sounds like you were dating the dark masculine and not an alpha.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that because I know that for myself, down my own development, I was this dark masculine from my addiction, came from an abusive childhood, and it just played out in one relationship, and that was really the tipping point for me.
Right. Yeah. Well,
I'm curious, where was that point on the journey with him where you felt, oh, this doesn't feel good, but actually possibly I'm projecting that you let it slip?
yeah, I wouldn't say I let it slip. I went into it knowingly, Bambos.
From the beginning, you mean?
Yeah, because I actually believed that I had the ability. I believed that I had the ability. I believed that I had the presence to just be this. Yeah, it's kind of like being a witness to someone as things in them are dying. And as long as you don't get caught up in their mind movements, it will die eventually. It's just how skillful can we be?
Wow.
In the death process, because we're all dying to some degree or another. It's just how.
I'd love to just qualify that quickly.
Yeah.
In my terms, I would say, how much space can we create for the healing without creating a codependency?
Yeah, great one. Well, that's what happened, because what actually happened was I realised, and this is part of my darkness that I hadn't realised. I hadn't realised that I myself was codependent because I was enabling something that I just should have said, hey, you know what? So it took me a while to get there, but I didn't do it through anything I'd read or anyone else I'd spoken to. I had to go through that full awakening experience myself. I had to live it. And so imagine like being out in Nova Scotia in the middle of nowhere
Sounds like a horror movie, actually. The Glass House.
Well, you know, he used to say to me that he'd had, you know, when he was a child, he just had these horrible nightmares about being stuck in this room somewhere with this person, and you know, he'd had nightmares of murder, and I mean, this was really dark. He was suffering incredibly, and it just didn't faze me until, you know, at some point, I think we'd had a connection with some people this one day, and he'd been talking to our neighbours, and then he came in and he just decided that I was in a mood about something, and he just, for the first time, he just laid into me verbally, and wow, it was really intense. And all I could do was I just stood there, and I was just in presence while I had this verbal attack going on outside me that I've never experienced. The sort of, it was literally like a demon had got hold of him, and it wasn't him. I could see it wasn't him, but I couldn't do anything. I literally couldn't do anything. You know, maybe somebody else could have just laughed and made a joke about it, but I was just literally, I was frozen. So that tells me about my own trauma, that, you know, I kind of felt frozen, like I couldn't move. I didn't know what to do. All I could do was just breathe and be present.
Did you do the typical apologize afterwards, like the mea culpa?
It felt so bad.
Yeah, of course. I explode, and then it's like, oh, I'm so sorry I did that.
Oh, it was so obvious, you know. And at that point, he just said, you know what, wow, you know, I think we should just back off, you know, let's just be friends. But we're in the middle of and so it was hard for me, because I was completely in love with this man, this beautiful man, and I was just so committed to making this relationship work.
Yeah, I mean, the beauty is what I thought was beautiful, going back to a point when you said I was centered, I was living my full. It was like, oh, now I have space to invite someone like this into it.
Yeah, isn't that the case, right? But it's
exactly.
Just like, wow.
It's like a drinker who says, "Oh, I'm not an alcoholic anymore. I can have another drink." But I mean, on one level, what?
Actually, he actually smoked tons of weed, and I didn't. Wow, yeah. I mean, that was a whole thing for me too, because I'd not been, you know, I mean, I've tried weed, of course I have, but I've not been addictive.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying that I'm not an addict. I mean, it's like we're all addicts. Yeah. There's always something that we're sort of grappling with in our lives. But that made it really, really difficult. And it just became clear that there was just a level of, I can see why somebody would, you know, do that, because life is just so painful. But there was just something emotionally that I couldn't reach in him. I couldn't reach, and it's okay, because ultimately I found out that during the course of these attacks, you know, they happened. They began to happen more regularly, and I think the thing was that once that boundary has been overstepped, then that's it. That's the level of behaviour that's just going to start. It just starts.
And there were no consequences, of course.
There's no consequences.
Yeah. So it happened about 6 times, and the reason, like, what actually happened was that in the end, we were lying in bed one night. We didn't actually have a lot of sexuality going on in the relationship, because he just felt at that particular moment in his life, it was a bit tough for him, and I was completely okay with that, because that wasn't the most important thing. But it did become important for me, and then I began to wonder, wow, what's happening here? Am I being used for resources, or So we were lying in bed this one night, and he got into bed and he was completely stoned, and I was lying in bed, and I just started all these entities, just like I saw this massive entity come into the room, and it got hold of me, and it was just like, it was angry with me. It was like the spirit of marijuana came in, and it was just like it was trying to get me. And at that point, I said, okay, right, we'll have to go into separate rooms. And, you know, I was just not equipped to, let's say, my communication skills were just not, I was not able to navigate this with him.
When
I'm not a professional, you know, it's like
a question going back to entities, the word you used, entities, yet who's a friend, you may have even met her. She asked, how would you describe that? Like, what was that experience for you?
Oh, what was it like? It was wild. It was like, imagine you're lying in the wilds, and you've got like these you've got windows around your room, and I'm just lying there, and all of a sudden I actually see this. It was something like out of a Harry Potter movie. Do you remember the Dementors?
Yeah.
Right. Well, it was like a Dementor, and it came in, and it was like coming through and trying to get into me, and it was trying to eat my soul up. I mean, it was really intense. At that point, I was just like, wow, what on earth is going on here? Yeah, it was.
I mean, it was a metaphor, of course, for everything that was going on in your life.
Well, it was a metaphor. And so at that point, you know, I just said, look, I need to, you know, we need to sleep in separate rooms. And I literally had to start fighting for my life every day.
Explain that. What does that actually mean?
What it meant was I felt myself. It was like I was going into this weird, it was like a forest. It was actually like going into the dark feminine, like, you know, into this gnarly old forest that's overgrown. And it was playing out in real life as well, because I would go into the forest and things would happen out there, and I'd be like, wow, okay, I'm seeing the signs. I'm just, thank you. No, I won't walk in this place, or I won't. So I was getting a really amazing feedback. Another thing that happened was, you know, because of the nature of all of this sort of like gradually creeping in to it was like it was seeping into me, and I was just like, I was fighting for my life. And I think that this is basically what happens to most of us who have been in really abusive environments, in toxic environments. We just haven't known. We've not known how to deal with it. There's been nobody to help us. We can't, you know, we have to be so ground down into nothing that it's literally on that point where you've got absolutely nothing, that you have to start, something in you has to rise. It's like your being, your soul, your spirit, whatever you want to call it, you must invoke, you must invoke your own heart, your own truth.
There's something that you're speaking to that I'll often say a lot, and I often experience it in my own life, is that when I'm coaching someone, I will often say, I'll first try to make them as miserable as possible because I know if they haven't had enough misery, they're not going to do anything to fundamentally change the thing. So I don't want them to feel positive. Like I want them to say, no, obviously. And what I'm hearing in you, and I know it of myself, is that when I've been around toxic people and I've sort of had any attachment to any outcome that they were connected to, I got lost. Because now the outcome and them were now connected. And since I was attached to the outcome, then they were part of that outcome, tangentially or otherwise. So it's quite fascinating that in a way, that's the whole, often in the Buddhist practice of letting that idea or that self idea die so that then you can rediscover what else is there. But that is not an easy process.
It wasn't, Andy, because what actually happened was the moment that I said, okay, let's go in separate rooms, a death process began in myself. The moment I said no to that, I began feeling like I was, it's sort of the, if you want to call it, like the landscape shifted, my inner landscape shifted, and I began feeling like I was in a desert, like I was, oh God, it was like I was dying from the inside out.
There must have been so much fear.
Oh, it was horrendous. Like my nervous system was literally, I'll get to that in a moment.
Yeah.
My nervous system was literally, it was just, wow, it was on fire. I was going through this like grief, like, oh my goodness, like, oh,
Feels like you're choking.
It was, yeah, totally. It was so intense, but I just knew I had to stay with it. I had to stay with it, and I just had to do whatever I could do. So I had, I was doing breathing exercises. I was having a lot of dreams at that time. It was really scary because I got into this place where I felt like I was in the middle of Stockholm syndrome, and
what does that mean?
Well, basically that I was I felt like I was being held prisoner by something really, really cruel, and like some kind of, I felt the full victim. Like, wow, like I felt like it's so deep,
Yeah.
But I was still okay in it because, you see, I'd built up all this presence, and I didn't know what this presence was for, but it was for this, obviously.
Wow.
It was almost like the death of the being. It was like the death of my being. Like I'd been for years and years, I'd been cultivating this beautiful space, this beautiful presence, and it had to die.
Would you say being or identity?
Being. It was my being.
You know what I laugh is that before and after, so this is going to sound even paradoxical.
Yeah.
I would have seen you as a spiritual person before you made peace with what you've made peace with. And now that you've made peace with, I just see you being independent of spirituality.
That's exactly what happened for me.
But isn't that ironic? Because everyone would think on a spiritual path, you'd end up in a more spiritual path. But in your case, which I can clearly identify with my own, is that in the end, you see through it. And it doesn't mean it's not spiritual, but you're not identified with spirituality anymore because that's its own trap, of course.
Yeah, not when you've been touched by death.
Yeah.
This is where, Case comes in, of course, because Case has never left me.
Yeah.
I just have so much love for him. He's been around on many occasions and still comes sometimes. So, but anyway, so that's what was happening. And it was interesting because at one point I thought I was just going completely, I was like, wow, what is going on with me? It's all me, that was what the reflection was telling me. It's like, it's you, you know, you're wrong. But of course, there was an element of me that had a judgment about the use of substances. So, because that's also a path. I mean, that's also a valid path. But I just kind of like, maybe, who's to say that I didn't make a wrong conclusion, or I didn't draw a conclusion that I hadn't realised about the use of substances and the spiritual, the spiritual journey for some people.
I mean, that gets into the question of, is it escape, or is it to escape looking outward, or to escape looking inward?
Yeah.
Is the substance being used for that purpose, or is it used as a means of
to go
inward? Yeah.
Yeah. So there were lots of things that were tied up in it, but basically what happened again was that, I've had a couple of instances in my life where I've been, since I met you, where I've really been I've been under intense pressure, and I've actually seen the reality of what I draw on when I'm under pressure. Because that's the beauty of life. Life will show you what you really draw on. And so what had happened to me was that I'd gradually, as a result of these experiences of drawing on my source rather than myself, it had led me to a process of actually being completely sort of in myself, okay with all kinds of wild things going on the outside, and I have the capacity to be present in them. Yeah. But it's really difficult to explain to another person when they're in the middle of their rage attack or whatever they're having, or even a thought about something. It's like, what it develops in you is there's nothing to defend. Because you trust in life, you trust in, this is what it's about. It's about us leaving each other, hands off. It's like everyone is entitled to their own journey. And that was the ultimate thing that came out of it for me. But
follow me here, because now I feel like there's a paradox that I can't quite get my head around in this. So you see that you can make a hell of a lot of space for another person, even when they're victimizing you. Victimizing is the wrong word, because that wouldn't be perceived as victimization. It would be when they're raging. Now, at what point is it no longer okay? So what is the boundary that you set, and how do you reach that? Because that's the question, right?
That's the huge question for all of us. Yeah.
So where was that for you?
Well, where it was for me was, I had said, look, if you want to rage, look, do it a different way. Go out into the garden, or I don't know, I was trying to sort of, just give a few ideas. But by that point, it's like, no, don't tell me what to do. So it becomes like this sort of what you would call a mothering thing.
Yeah.
And it's experienced by any man as that's just anathema to your masculinity. To have a woman suggest, it's like,
this is how you should behave.
You can't do that, not at that juncture. So it happened about 5 or 6 times, and on the 6th go, I was just like so exhausted by what was happening that it was one day, and it was like a trauma response. It was just like something else took me away. It was early in the morning, and we just had this, I had to do something with the bills because I was paying for everything. Like I was enabling everything. But the reason I was doing that was because my partner at the time said, I don't want anything to do with money. I don't want anything to do with the matrix. I'm out. And I was like, okay, I totally see where we're going here. Yeah. hence the homestead and growing food. Anyway, something happened, and it was to do with money, and I got a bit wobbly in that. I was like, oh no, we've got this bill, and he was like, oh, God, stop it. I mean, he was just like the Zen teacher of and he just laid into me, but it was just the way it happened was just wow. So it was literally raging and raging. And he said to me, you want me, you want me to rage? I can rage for an hour or 2 hours if I want. It was just like, he could just summon this thing at will and just spit fire at me for like, it was like So on the 6th go, my legs picked me up. He went into the shower. My legs picked me up. I ran into my room. I grabbed everything I could. Literally, I had like a pair of leggings on, a t-shirt, and they were my pajamas. And I grabbed my phone. I grabbed my computer. I grabbed my purse, and I ran into the car quickly. It was right outside. I locked the door, and he came out, and I was driving away, and he was chasing after me, and I was just like, I mean, literally,
like a bad movie.
Let's slow down here.
Because I thought I was going to be murdered. This is what, but there's another answer to that too. This is what started to happen. I started to fear for my life. So I drove away. I went to a coffee place, and I just sat there, and I just there was no way on earth I could calm my system down. I couldn't. I drove for miles, and I found this little tiny bed and breakfast, and I just lay that night in bed, and I was just lying in bed, and my entire system was full of this. It was just like the fire of hell was just like pumping through my nervous system. I couldn't do anything, couldn't slow it down. I didn't have anything. I just still had a tiny little bit of presence left. And I didn't know what to do. I got my computer out, and I was literally on the verge of booking a flight back to Europe. I was like, get yourself on that plane, girl. Just do it. I spoke to a friend of mine, and he was like, what the, get yourself out of there. What are you doing? Anyway, the next morning, I was just like, no, I have to go back and face this again. So I drove. It was in the middle of this part of Nova Scotia, and I was driving through.
I have a question there.
Yeah.
This is an important moment because everyone faces this moment in their lives.
Right.
What made that you decided to go back and face it? So what was it in you that said, I'm not going out running? Like, what happened inside of you?
Because I know that you can't run away from anything, really.
Mm-hmm.
The only way is through it.
Yeah.
That's the only way. Because if not, you've not responded authentically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've been really resilient. I've been very lucky in my life, Andy. I've been extremely resilient. I've had presence of mind as well as heart, and as well as body. So anyway, I got in the car, and I'm driving through this dirt track in the middle of Nova Scotia, and this big eagle flies out right in front of the car, and it just like gave me, it just came, and it just came right in front of the car, and it flew. I was only driving about like 10 or 15 miles an hour, really slowly. And it just flew right in front of me for what seemed like forever. And yeah, I was just like, wow. That level of recognition from the natural world. It's just like, wow. So I was like, okay, I have to go back and do this. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, so the power of the eagle, kind of, it was just a little moment there. And I went back, and I just went back, and in my full power, I just said, I want you off of this property. You know, there was just like no. I walked in, he was there, he'd not even asked anything. Obviously, he was in a really bad space himself, because these episodes take a lot out of you emotionally and mentally. They're really, really difficult to be with. And I just said, I just want you off the property, finish your harvest, and just go. You know, I still remained open. This was sort of like in June. This was in June. Then we had hurricane. I'm just trying to think which one it was that came through Nova Scotia, and like there was no electricity for 10 days. My daughter had just come to visit. I mean, honestly, you couldn't make this stuff up. But it's just like this connection with the natural world that is, wow, you can't deny it. It's so amazing. So yeah, so basically it didn't really get any better. I just decided to, you know, I would cook the food, keep the place clean. I'd cook for him. I'd still do stuff. He would be out doing his thing in the garden. We'd never eat together. It was just, oh, it was just heartbreaking. It was really, really heartbreaking. But despite
there was something in there. There was something in there. There was it feels like to me, and this is what I'd love to, like there was something in that action, which if you hadn't done it, you wouldn't have gotten peace or resolve with it. And what was that period? Why was that period so important for you? Even if it sounds from the outside a bit crazy.
It does. It's wild woman craziness. That's what it is. It's just wild woman.
Is there some level of resolution that you got because of having gone through it that way and not said got on the plane and headed back?
Oh yeah. Totally. I had to face it because I'm accountable for myself. I'm 100% accountable for every single action that I make in my life. For everything that occurs, I'm like, yeah, wow. I'm not taking responsibility for other people. Wow. I'm taking full responsibility for myself. And I said to him, look, you know, I know my limitations, but I'm just really, really aware of my boundaries now. That was a massive lesson for me. That was huge.
I'm just hearing something. I'm hearing like three things. It was as if, by the way, my mind is being blown right now because what I'm hearing is that you were not going to leave a victim. So that wasn't going to happen. So you were, and it was as if you had to go back to behave the way you wish you had behaved, whatever, 3 months prior, by saying this isn't acceptable. And then almost standing your ground and reliving the same experience, but in a way that actually was the ideal way for you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And yeah, it was incredible because you're absolutely right. This is about core integrity. It is about pressure because there's a price to pay. Whatever anyone tells you about spirituality, there's a price to pay for not living what you know.
Yeah.
And that price becomes more and more inflated the less we use our knowledge.
Yeah.
The less we actually live what we know. So that was my biggest lesson, and I'm just like so grateful.
I want to know, how did it feel to be in that house before you came back with the eagle taking you back to the house, and after that and before? Like, how did you experience yourself differently in that house?
Well, I think the thing was that I knew I was going through a death process. I mean, the death process had just got me so deeply at that point that I felt that I had closure, because I'd gone and I'd said, look, no, this is just not. And the thing was, there was always the risk that it was going to happen again. It could happen at any moment. It was literally like you never knew when it might strike. So you can imagine, like, this is like being on. That's why I was talking to you about Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
Because this is what happens, because it's very difficult to maintain your level of presence in a situation like that, because of the power. This is a power dynamic.
Yeah.
It's a power dynamic that you have to lay down in yourself.
And I guess I make an assumption, and that isn't necessarily correct, but assuming that when you went back, the power dynamic no longer existed in the shape and form it did before, because you didn't give up your power anymore. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and then I got help, and then I got help from a dear friend of mine who is an amazing Toltec and gender worker, and he works with men, actually, and that's his speciality, and he's done that for over 20 years, and he began to mentor me, and just has been an incredible source of healthy masculine in my life. Yeah.
We got a question from Yet, which I think is a really interesting question. She asked a while ago, but I think we can go back to it.
What happened there?
She said, when your separation, was it the dying that was the start of the separation, or the surviving?
Oh, that's fascinating,
isn't it?
No, it was the dying, because it's when it's so counterintuitive, because on the physical level, the body will move to save us. I mean, like the cellular part of us will naturally move to save us. And I think a lot of times we just get very, we get confused about what's natural and innate to us. It's natural and innate if we've got a good nervous system for that to remove us. If we've developed enough body awareness and body intelligence, our body's just gonna, it will naturally lift you up and move you out of the way if there's anything that doesn't feel okay. So for me, it was more about I said it was like my being. It was like that was what was dying. That's what had to die.
I've got a question, which is interesting going in this direction, is that I find it fascinating to know that Bambos was once the man that you had to run away from.
Yeah.
So what I'm curious from like how it is for you to hear her experience, and how has that been for you to hear that?
Oh yeah, thank you. I'd love to hear that.
I can't deny I was reliving certain images, and when, like, my mind couldn't grasp, but I could feel a lot. Like when you were talking, I was like, oh fuck, none of this logically makes sense, but it all feels, how do you call it, if it makes sense?
Yeah,
On a physical level,
yeah.
or emotional level. Yeah, I guess I was also attracting women who were weaker than me, and they had to take the space, and in that taking the space, it broke me, and it had to happen several times before I could allow the pain to be there.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the anger was not allowing the pain to be there.
Yeah.
This is it for all of us. This is
And when I experienced partners trying to solve me, that's when shit hit the fan in a big way.
Yeah. It's that recalcitrant. It's like the stand-up sort of.
And what was it? What is it about that? Because she experienced it. You lived it firsthand. So how was that? Like, what is it about that specifically that touches such a raw nerve?
I think it's the mothering aspect. And I think that what we are all doing is, in our own journey, in our own way, we are all unveiling the dark feminine in this time. And it doesn't matter if you're male, female, whatever you are, even kids. I mean, these times are just so unprecedented.
And when we talk about the dark feminine, we're talking about vindictive, victimized. Is that what we're talking about? Just to make it clear. Because you'll often use the term, Bambos uses the term as well, and I'm not necessarily completely familiar with when someone says, what's the dark feminine?
Yeah, it's just like this vast black void that can't be filled.
From a behavior point of view?
So there's the conscious dark feminine, then the conscious,
okay,
the unconscious dark feminine.
Okay.
So
yeah,
when you're conscious, you can be in the dark, and it can be used.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I know the one time I was consciously angry, opposed to all the other times when I wasn't consciously angry. And it was almost like the difference was I was angry, and literally a second later I was laughing.
That's it.
Where before I would have been angry, and then I would have been a second afterwards regretting that I was angry.
Yeah.
I was almost cherishing the anger afterwards, if to put it like, yeah.
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 The funny thing is, in your story, I couldn't get where you were triggering him.
Right.
Like, just to give context, in my journey, I was being triggered because I was attracting women who had daddy issues.
Ah, right. That's what he had before me. Yeah. Yeah.
And just to elaborate, women who liked the affection of other men, but weren't necessarily clear that they were leading those men on, and then being angry if Bambo said, hey, listen, I'd prefer you not getting naked massages from a man you don't know.
So,
and then why are you so possessive of me?
So in a way, I was not in my power back then to say this behavior is not okay. So I was managing the relationship and getting angry and reacting, whereas now it would be like, oh, this doesn't work for me.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for that.
You do you, I'll do me.
Well, that's what I do actually for men. I think I would say that is the gift that I have for men. I help them move through their sort of, more spastic ways of this energy moving through their bodies, and I've just developed this really huge capacity to sit with them while all of this stuff comes up, and it's just happened again recently, and it's just been so sweet. It's been very, very sweet. But again, I've had to put my boundaries up. It's been very much different this time, because there's been a lovely reciprocity in that. But it's just the space that I've developed. This is what it brings up. And
I know we're going over.
We're totally going over the show.
Okay, good. I want to take us back to the beginning, because it's kind of lingering in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
You said no to someone that actually was quite grounded, loving. He actually was giving you. It appears that he was giving you everything, but maybe there was no polarity.
Well, the thing was, I think that I think there were some issues around bipolar, perhaps, or something like that I didn't realise was there.
What does bipolar mean?
Bipolar, it's sort of like, you get these highs of like huge dopamine rush, and like you're really busy, and then the next thing you're just down, and you just like can't move for a few days. And I mean, it's a label basically that
it's like it's living like big explosion, big depression, big explosion, big depression.
Okay, that was that relationship.
I think that's what was pretty much part of it, and I think that's probably why, because obviously it's a response to really huge traumatic events in our childhood, that we've not had we just don't have the circuitry to deal with that. And so I think that's where a lot of the, a lot of people need to smoke to actually sort of like be able to balance their system out, rather than, taking all the junk stuff that we're offered these days. So I think there was an element of that in it. And it's just like this wild power that we have to learn how to manage. And I don't know, I can't really tell you what it is about my system, but I've just developed a way in myself that I'm able to manage huge amounts of energy and just be like really, really quieted in it, and just allow all of that to move up. And my area is really about just giving that space for that to move up, and gradually it becomes, if there's a real response and if I sense that there's a true impeccability of spirit, then gradually that's going to change, and it's going to shift over time. And I'll stay with that. I will absolutely stay with it, because the truth of my response is my staying in that. But when it becomes a pattern that I can see is there's no longer any capacity in that, I've not got the capacity, or the other person hasn't, then it's time to get help from maybe someone else that can take it further.
I've got several different areas that I've got questions that I got to say and points to summarize, but I'm going to leave you to continue if there's things that you'd like to dig into.
Well, there's two things. One is from my side as what I learned. Well, actually, like there was a point in my life when Andy stepped in, and he was like, he actually taught me to look at anger as something's not okay here. It's like a signal. So what's not okay? So in a way, it whenever I would feel the anger coming up, instead of letting override me and react from it, it would be like, oh, this doesn't feel good. And today I was angry at someone. I told him to fuck off for being manipulative.
Yeah, because you can spot that immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I can just give it, and in the past I would like, oh shit, is this okay? Like, no, fuck you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's your beautiful shining individuality coming through.
That's when your over emotion becomes your like honed skill.
Yeah.
Like the best people to interact with are the ones that have got so much emotion and have figured out how to channel it in a way that isn't self-sacrificing or suffering.
Exactly. Because ultimately it's not, it's personal, and it's not and it's impersonal.
And
Yeah.
the second question, Julia, would be who did this person represent someone in your own past that was a bit unresolved? And
Yeah.
when we walk away from unresolved, they come back more enhanced.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Was it daddy or not? That's the question we have for you.
No, actually, you know what? I think I wrote something about that on Facebook. It was my grandfather. But I came in as a baby, and my grandfather was just like the wildest force of nature I've ever met in my life. He was a like athletic Scot, well, Highlander, and he was just, nobody messed with him. And he was just totally wild and unruly, and he'd had a heart attack. And when I was born, because of the family dynamic, he fought for me. I was going to be adopted. Well, first of all, I was going to be aborted. Then I was going to be adopted. And then my grandfather came to the hospital and said, okay, no, the baby's coming with us. And so I basically had a really strong connection with him. I loved him. He was like my rock. He was just an amazing, strong, masculine presence in my life. And just before he died, he wrote me a letter, just saying what a healing presence I'd been in his life, and what an amazing bond we'd had. The last letter, right? So in answer to your question, powerful forces and currents have moved through my lineage. And I honor all of my ancestors. And I'm here right on the tip of everything that they were conscious about and also unconscious about.
Wow.
I get to be, I'm the resolution.
Yeah.
I'm the equation.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
There's three things you said that I noted, some might maybe comment, some to discuss, almost shows in their own rights. But the thing is, as you mentioned, and you're not the only one I've had that discussion with, is a partner who smokes or drinks to take down stress or to move away from pain. And I've often said, I'm not going to work or coach anybody if they're influenced by anything, because then I'm not coaching them. I'm basically coaching an influence, and then the influence changes when they're back sober. So why would I waste my time? But when you were in the relationship, it's interesting that to some degree he'd come in and maybe have smoked and then be in bed. Then how was it for you to be with the person who's not really the person? And then how did you deal with that?
Well, yeah, that's a beautiful question, because basically I knew that I just knew the goodness of who, that's me. I just know the goodness of what I see in front of me. That's it. And now and again, I just get really, it's been a wild ride, but I stay with that.
You would say you had compassion for it, and you didn't feel, because there would be the next word that I'd go on to, you didn't feel like a codependency. Like, I'm not happy with it, but I'm going to let it be because I know he needs it, but I'm not happy with it. That's not you didn't cope with it then.
No, I didn't. I can't really, it's like, At that particular point, yes, there was still an element of that. I was still battling with that because I hadn't. You see, you don't know until you're in the situation, Andy.
Exactly.
You just don't know.
What do you mean you don't know?
Well, you don't know how you're actually going to deal with anything. Not when you're in this alignment. It's like you just have to sort of go in.
I agree. There's no one answer. That's clear.
I noticed when I made that comment,
yeah,
I kind of bled into it because I felt emotion there. I've said no to certain things in my life, like a really strong no. So if I meet someone who is smoking or drinking, like there's nothing to talk about. You might be an amazing person, but I'm not going to jump into a relationship with you.
Oh no, yeah, totally. This was not.
Oh, so I maybe I was out of context.
I don't know. I'm totally fascinated with where we're going right now.
It's fascinating. I think this
now,
yeah.
My question to you is based on what Bambos just said.
Yeah.
If you were to go into another relationship and you saw someone who was smoking to compensate for an inability to deal with their pain, would you go into it still? Or would you say, no, Andy, that wouldn't happen again in my life? Or you're like, no, maybe it would. I don't know that yet.
I can't say that. And I'll tell you why. Because for me, it's like a soul response. It's not, it's like a...
no, I got it. You can't say definitive until you're in it. But like, would you say there's a high likelihood it wouldn't happen again? Or would you say no?
Yeah, for sure,
yeah. Okay.
Yes, because what I've learned is that, you know, it's like the more alive you are, it's almost like the more you have this propensity to see how dead people are in their lives, in their living. I mean, I know.
Oh my God, that might be the quote of the day. The more alive you are, the more propensity you have to see how dead others are. That is beautiful.
And also, I like in my imagination or in my. I see that like sometimes when I'm talking with women and they're like, why am I always attracting this? And I'm like, if you stand in your power, this will not be attracted to that energy anymore.
Yeah, it won't. It's true.
Or
true.
It will be too scared to approach.
You know what? That reminds me, because I love the books of Carlos Castaneda, and
I know you do.
I've just So it reminds me of it's like the coat of awareness. You know, it's like the glowing coat of awareness, and that you will not be palatable to these creatures.
Yeah.
You will not. So basically, you know, my glowing coat of awareness was.
Yeah, exactly. You won't attract it anymore because you've made peace with it. You attract the stuff that you haven't made peace with yet in yourself.
Yeah, it's really simple, actually.
Pretty simple.
And you don't need to mother anyone anymore.
What a relief.
Oh, shit.
I've let myself off the hook there, like major.
I can already tell you the energy that I met you before you went through this whole process, that motherly, you know, like that soft, like your voice was 3 octaves lower, you know, you only whispered words. Like that woman is sort of still in you, but it's not you anymore. It's kind of beautiful.
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh my goodness. But listen to me, like I can just laugh about it because
I know.
It's the comedy.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't make this up, can you? It's like,
but we have to go through the journey. We have to go through that journey ourselves, because anyone can tell you whatever it is, their wisdom or insight. But if you haven't done it yourself, then you haven't actually have it in you to say, I needed to fuck up a lot of stuff to get at the back end to realize, now I understand.
Yeah, and that's when you've got nothing left to defend.
Yeah.
That's when you wake up every day and you're just like, wow, what can I give? You know, it's like, what can I give? You know, but what can I give myself first? And then from that overflowing place, I will naturally give to others and it doesn't matter. It's such a reverence for this whole process. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And actually, what's going to happen is we're all going to arrive in the same place. It's going to be like walking into a surprise party, and then suddenly the lights go on, and it's like, oh my God, it's like we've all arrived in the same room. And we've just gone and done these like really amazing things, feats, ability, capabilities. What we're doing is moving to a place of real collaboration with one another to just bring our gifts through and see the beauty in each one, in each individual journey. And like, yeah.
I still have 10 questions, but we're already an hour and 15 minutes. So I'm going to park that for another time.
Yeah.
I guess that means you're back with us.
Yeah, exactly. We'll find another topic.
Yeah,
surviving the feminine. We'll call that the next show, Surviving the Feminine.
Yeah, because there's a lot of toxic feminine around, isn't there?
Yeah. Would you ever say you were toxic feminine?
I would never say that doesn't play a role. Okay. I can't say that.
I never felt you to be toxic.
I think that would be really ignorant of me because...
Yeah, no, but I mean, toxic, at least in how I've heard Bambos now describe it back to me.
No, not at all. No. There's more of a... It's like, I feel like there's... What I'm moving in is a sort of... It's like a core integrity that genuinely wants to see people thrive. And I just love seeing people it fills me with so much joy when I see, like when I saw Bambos doing his own. It's the most exquisite thing on the human journey when you look across and you see another human being who you absolutely know without a doubt is so authentic.
Wasn't that the most incredible thing?
Every day. Yeah, but
1 hour on screen and letting every raw emotion be present to the world and no one showing up. I mean, it's incredible. And you were one of the 2 people that would show up, and that was even more beautiful because if you did it to get views, then it would lose what its purpose. The purpose is to be present, right? And real presence isn't all that entertaining at times.
It's not. It's right. You're absolutely right. And that's what I mean. Bambos, actually, I just felt the authenticity in it. It's not about, I think in our journey towards the new human, it's not about who's looking at us or who's watching us. It's literally about us becoming so childlike again that we feel so innocent in our expression. That it's just beautiful. It's just like you want to reach out and go, hi, yeah, look, I saw you over there doing your thing, and oh my goodness, I'm really, wow, that's so cool. Like it's just playful.
Yeah, you know what I found speaking to that was like on the new book launch that did so well. Like I saw they were really loving people. They were really loving people, and then I felt the resentful people.
Oh, yeah.
What do you mean?
The people that were, you know what, I wish I'd done my book. Or, but he didn't really write it because he did, like everyone that would diminish the accomplishment of whatever it was.
Maar dat is doe maar gewoon. Dat is doe maar gewoon.
Yeah, exactly. The doe maar gewoon. And what I laughed at was I was like, wow, I remember myself being like that.
Yeah.
Like looking like, oh, it wasn't that great. And of course, since I was doing that to others, I was doing it to myself.
Yes. That's the victim.
So now it's so funny. I see people doing the littlest things. I am so excited, celebratory, and doing whatever support is reasonable just to like support it. And it feels like in supporting them, I'm always supporting myself because there's a joy in just the trying and the effort.
Totally.
And the outcome. I mean, I'm so sick of the
outcome.
Thanks
for saying that, because that is exactly what I think Bambos, when we were talking about him doing his thing, it's not about the outcome. It's so not about that. And I think that is that's a very feminine thing in a way. I'm not claiming it for the feminine, but I'm just saying it's a really open, soft space, that it's fluid. It's so intelligent and it's so fluid and it's super responsive.
Yeah.
So
Isn't it?
responsive.
Yeah.
It's just a way different level of living and being and just.
It doesn't need control. Actually,
No,
it's some no.
It's a bit like this show, no? This show also doesn't. People always ask us, "Oh, are you making money yet?"
Yeah. Every time they ask me if we're making money or what's your business proposal, I'm thinking, okay, am I supposed to try to say something so that you feel like we have some validating your ideas of what it should be? It's quite funny.
All right, but you know what? This is what I'm also doing, and I feel that it's just about doing. It's the incremental nature of it.
The
And
incremental.
if you love it, it's just like, just do a bit of it every day. Who cares if the world isn't looking? It's
I think about it like you would not have come on the show if it was intended to be any level of sensationalization or trying to create. I mean, who would want to be part of that, especially when it's intimate? Like the whole purpose of it. And so if two people watch is who gives a fuck? Like that's the best, like the whole, if we're doing it like, okay, how do we create it and explode it and manipulate people in order to have them feel like whatever it is they should, like it loses any joy. And yet that's what society pushes you to do.
Well, that's what we're coming into now. We're coming into, as human beings, we're coming into this huge, I mean, it's like this depth of intimacy and connectivity and, you know, reverence for one another, that there's such a movement. It's such a huge power that it just surges up into the personal. And it's just like, it animates the personal in a way that looks, to anyone who's not moved through those levels, it's going to look like you're some kind of, you know, I had somebody call me a narcissist
last
week.
Love it.
And
we could also do that as a show.
I hope you said I hope you said I hope you said I resemble that remark.
I was like, well, you know what? I totally get it when, you know, I respond in a certain way. I could be a bit pointy, but hey, come on. Does that actually, can you seriously say that about me?
I mean, you know what? As you know, my life, and you could say anything about me, I'm going to already say, and it's fucking great. So everything is I am a narcissist and it's fucking great, you know?
Yeah.
No one's going to get me stuck in defending a label. Jesus Christ, that's gone, you know?
Yeah, well, totally, because it's all about our orientation. And once you are tuned in to what your authentic soul embodiment, there's nothing in the world that is interesting. It's like you're just expressing yourself. You're just joyfully sharing yourself. It's not, you don't get caught up in that anymore. Yeah. Just levels and levels of it. Thank you. It's been great.
Our longest show ever.
Yeah, it is.
We'll have to cut it into 2 podcasts in the so someone or they're gonna have to have a long trip on the car if they're gonna listen to us this long.
Yeah. So so the other thing is that I want to say that I do actually, I don't want to call it coach people, but I do offer mentoring services. And that's my gift to this world right now, because I've had to ask myself, what am I giving? How am I, you know, how am I authentically using what I have learned up until now? So I am actually coaching at the moment.
I'd love for you to elaborate just a little on that and say who would be outside, because everyone could call themselves a coach. So what I'd love, of course, people will have heard you're speaking, so there'll be some people attracted to you. But if you had to articulate, who are the people you'd say, wow, if you're in this area, I'm probably someone uniquely capable of supporting. Who would those people be?
I feel that anybody who has reached a point in their life where they are ready to align their mind, their heart, and their body. And to move in a space of real presence, depth. Anyone that wants to explore deeper levels of intimacy and connectivity, and
it's a little bit vague for me.
I know. I don't like it. I don't like it. I want you to give me what's the negative. You've given me the positive. What's the negative?
Like, who are these people?
Like say. I'll give you an example. Let me give you an example, please. Yeah. I can help you if you're a man that rages against women and support you in finding out how to integrate that emotion so that it'll be grounded. And like, is that someone you would say you'd be ideally suited to support?
Or the women?
Or the woman on the other side?
Both.
Okay. So if you're in an abusive relationship and you don't necessarily know how to ground it, find a place to deal with the other and not fight or flight, then you're the person who can make that, give them space and figure out how to work through that.
Because what I offer is a transmission.
Right. So that sounds better from a marketing perspective. I'd buy that.
And that is what that's what ousia is.
Substance.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Nice. Isn't it funny how we work? We're like, no, we're not going to let you. We're going to either you're going to do it good or we're not going to let you do it. Like, we got to have somebody say, yeah, I need that service.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Maybe put your
obviously
contact details in the comments.
Contact details in the comments
on
so
the
people
Facebook
can always
group
come back.
And on the YouTube group.
Yes.
All right.
I love you, Julia.
I love you guys too. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Incredible. Thank you for being with us.
And thanks for being, just beautiful. Such a beautiful space to be in and share this. I've really, really appreciated your levels of presence and the amazing questions that you ask, Andy. And it's just a nice balance. I feel that what Bambos it's just so beautiful, like the depth of presence that Bambos offers on the vulnerability, and I really appreciate that.
He kicked my leg twice to tell me to shut up, which is really good today.
Yeah, he's really beautiful.
The people don't get to see that. He's like moderating behavior.
We should have a camera here pointing at us.
Pointing down. He squeezes, pushes,
Oh, it's lovely. It's just put the two of you together. It's just, what a magic combo, really. Yeah, what a great expression of collaboration.
Thank
you. Yeah,
it's
a work of art, really.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Love you. Bye. Wow. After having gone through all of the sickness of the last few days, we really came back on fire.
It was like I was thinking, I'm not gonna fucking do the shows if you're not around. Like, they're not gonna enjoy them.
Oh, I would have been peppering questions from Andy wants to know. We have 4 more shows this week, right?
No, one of them is not on yet. I need to put it.
I know which one it is, though.
I don't know either.
Because I've been I know because I've been asked. Uncovering the secret of. I don't even know it.
Oh shit, we don't know.
we have something on tomorrow. We don't know which one it is because we don't see the full title.
Tell you what, don't bother.
I agree. I totally agree with you. I totally agree. We'll see you for the rest of this week. Bambos. Jeez, I can't take you anywhere. We'll see you on a wonderful
Chaos.
Chaos.